Dr. Lisa Morgan sat in her chair and looked at the computer screens in front of her. The night was quiet at the radio telescope station in Puerto Rico. She had been working here for 30 years, listening to space for any signs of alien life. Every day she hoped to find something, but every day brought only silence from the stars. Tonight felt different. The computers were picking up something strange. It was not random noise from space. It was a pattern, a message that repeated over and over. Lisa felt her heart beat faster as she watched the data come in. This was what she had been waiting for her whole life. The signal was strong and clear. It came from a star system far away, more than 1,000 light-years from Earth. Lisa called her team, and soon the small building was full of scientists. They worked through the night to decode the message. What they found made everyone stop talking. The message contained math problems that any smart species would understand. It had maps of stars and planets, but most important, it had a cry for help. The aliens who sent this message were in trouble, big trouble. Dear Morgan picked up her phone and called Commander Jake Harrison at the military base. Jake was in charge of Earth's space defense program. He had been a soldier for 20 years and had seen many wars on Earth, but this call would change everything he knew about war. When Jake heard about the alien message, he drove to the telescope station right away. Lisa showed him the decoded parts of the signal. The aliens called themselves the Cathara. They lived on a planet in the Kepler 442 star system. Their world was being attacked by another alien race called the Vorthek. The Cathara message told a terrible story. The Vorthek had come to their system in huge ships. They destroyed cities from space and killed millions of Cathara people. The Cathara had tried to fight back, but their weapons were not strong enough. Their spaceships were destroyed. Their armies were beaten. Now, only a few million Cathara were left alive on their planet. What made Jake think hard was the last part of the message. The Cathara said they had been listening to Earth's radio signals for many years. They knew about human wars and violence. They knew humans were good at fighting and killing. The Cathara were asking the most violent species they knew to come and save them. Jake called President Helen Carter right away. It was 3 a.m, but this could not wait. The president listened to the whole story and told Jake to bring all the information to Washington. Within 6 hours, Jake was sitting in the White House Situation Room with the most powerful people on Earth. The room was full of generals, scientists, and government leaders. They all looked at the alien message. On the big screen, General Patricia Stone, who commanded all of Earth's military forces, spoke first. She said humans had the technology to travel faster than light. Earth had been working on this for 10 years after finding crashed alien ships in the desert. But this would be the first time humans traveled to another star system. Dr. Alex Turner, who studied alien life, looked worried. He had examined the data about the Vorthek. These aliens were big and strong. They lived on a planet with much stronger gravity than Earth. Their bodies were like living armor. They had conquered many other alien races before attacking the Cathara. Some people in the room thought it was too dangerous. Earth only had a few spaceships that could travel between stars. The Vorthek might be too strong for humans to fight. Others said Earth should stay hidden and not let the galaxy know humans existed. But President Carter had made up her mind. She stood up and looked around the room. She said that if peaceful aliens were asking for help, Earth would answer. She said humans had always protected those who could not protect themselves. This would not change just because the fight was in space instead of on Earth. The President ordered General Stone to prepare the Earth defense ship Retribution for a mission to the Cathara home world. The Retribution was Earth's biggest and strongest spaceship. It had weapons that could destroy cities and armor that could stop almost any attack. But more important, it had a crew of human soldiers who had trained their whole lives for war. Captain Ryan Brooks was chosen to command the mission. He had fought in wars in Africa and Asia. He had led soldiers in the worst battles Earth had seen in 50 years. Now he would lead them to fight aliens on a planet far from home. As news of the alien message spread through the government, people began to understand what this meant. Humans were not alone in the universe. There were other intelligent species out there. Some were peaceful like the Cathara. Others were dangerous like the Vorthek. Earth was about to enter a bigger and more dangerous universe than anyone had. Imagine. Dr. Morgan went back to her telescope and sent a message back to the Cathara. It was simple and short. She told them that Earth had received their call for help. She told them that human ships were coming. She told them to hold on just a little longer. The message would take 4 years to reach the Cathara planet traveling at the speed of light. But the human ships would get there much faster using their new faster-than-light engines. The Retribution would reach the Cathara system in just 2 months. All across Earth, military bases became busy. Soldiers loaded weapons and supplies onto ships. Scientists worked day and night to make sure the human technology would work in alien environments. Engineers built new types of weapons that could fight alien armor and shields. Commander Harrison knew this mission would be different from any war humans had ever fought. The enemy was stronger and had better technology. The battlefield was a planet humans had never seen. But he also knew something the Vorthek did not know. Humans came from the most dangerous planet in their part of space. Earth had tried to kill humans with ice ages, volcano eruptions, diseases, and disasters for millions of years. But humans had survived everything Earth could throw at them. Now, Earth was sending its children to the stars to do what they did best: fight for those who could not fight for themselves. The Vorthak had never faced anything like humans before. They were about to learn why Earth was called a death world, and why the species that survived on it were the most dangerous hunters in the galaxy. Captain Ryan Brooks walked through the halls of the Earth defense ship Retribution. The massive ship was as long as 3 football fields and filled with the most advanced weapons Earth had ever built. But Ryan knew the real strength of his ship was not the weapons. It was the people who would use them. The crew came from every country on Earth. There were soldiers from America, Russia, China, and 50 other nations. There were pilots who had flown fighters over desert battlefields. There were Marines who had fought in jungle wars. There were Special Forces operators who could kill with their bare hands. All of them had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never see Earth again. Chief Engineer Maria Santos worked in the engine rooms deep inside the ship. She had grown up in the slums of Mexico City, where she learned to fix broken machines with whatever parts she could find. Now she was making sure human weapons would work against alien technology no one had ever seen before. Maria and her team had studied every piece of information the Cathara had sent about Vorthak technology. The aliens used energy shields that could stop most weapons. Their ships were covered in some kind of living metal that could repair itself. But Maria was not worried. She had learned something important during her years as an engineer. Every machine had weaknesses. Every shield could be broken. It was just a matter of finding the right way to do it. Dr. Alex Turner spent his time in the ship's laboratory studying the biological data about the Vorthek. What he learned made him understand why the Cathara were so afraid. The Vorthak were not like anything that had ever lived on Earth. They were made of silicon instead of carbon. Their bodies were like rock that could think and move. They had lived on a planet where the gravity was 3 times stronger than Earth's gravity. This made them incredibly strong and hard to hurt, but Alex had studied Earth's most dangerous animals. He knew that being big and strong was not always enough. Humans had killed animals much bigger than themselves for thousands of years. Speed, intelligence, and surprise could beat size and strength. The Vorthak might be tough, but they had never fought humans before. Commander Jake Harrison called all the senior officers to the main meeting room. The walls were covered with pictures and data about the Cathara system. Jake pointed to the planet where the Cathara lived. It was bigger than Earth and covered mostly with water. The Cathara cities floated on the oceans like giant lily pads. The Vorthek ships were attacking these cities from space. General Patricia Stone appeared on the communication screen from Earth. She told the crew that more ships were being prepared. The Earth defense ship Vengeance would follow them in 2 weeks. The mining ship New Texas was being loaded with enough nuclear weapons to destroy a small moon. But the Retribution would reach the Kithara system first. They would have to fight alone until help arrived. The ship's weapons officer, Lieutenant Colonel Beth Williams, showed the crew what they would be fighting with. The Retribution had kinetic cannons that could fire metal slugs at incredible speeds. It had plasma weapons that could melt through steel like butter. It had missile pods loaded with nuclear warheads. But the most dangerous weapon was something new that Earth scientists had just finished building. The experimental weapon was called a gravity hammer. It could create small black holes that would crush anything near them. The scientists were not sure it would work against alien shields, but they were eager to find out. If it worked, it could destroy a Vortex ship in seconds. Dr. Turner gave the crew a briefing about what to expect when fighting the Vortex. The aliens were about 9 feet tall and weighed as much as a small car. Their skin was like stone and could stop most bullets. They had 4 arms and could use tools and weapons that would be too heavy for humans to lift. But they moved slowly. Because of their size and weight, the doctor explained that the Vortex had never learned to fight wars the way humans did. They usually won by being bigger and stronger than their enemies. They would attack with overwhelming force and crush anyone who fought back. This worked against most alien species, but humans were different. Humans had learned to fight enemies that were bigger and stronger than them. They used tricks, traps, and tactics that confused their enemies. Captain Brooks gathered his soldiers in the main hangar. These were the men and women who would board Vortex ships and fight the aliens face to face. They wore new battle armor that could protect them from energy weapons and help them move in different gravity. Their weapons were designed to punch through alien armor and shields. Sergeant Tony Richards had fought in more wars than any other soldier on the ship. He had led special operations missions in Afghanistan, Syria, and North Korea. He looked at the young soldiers around him and saw fear in their eyes. But he also saw determination. These people had volunteered to travel across the galaxy to fight monsters they had never seen to save. Aliens they had never met. Tony told his soldiers about the wars he had fought on Earth. He told them about fighting in deserts where the heat could kill in minutes. He told them about jungle battles where the enemy could be hiding behind any tree. He told them about urban warfare where death waited around every corner. He said that fighting aliens would be scary, but it would not be harder than the fights they had already won on Earth. The ship's doctor, Rachel Kim, prepared the medical bay for casualties. She studied the Kithara medical data to learn how to treat wounded aliens. She also prepared for human injuries that might be caused by alien weapons. Her team practiced surgery in zero gravity and low gravity. They learned to treat burns from energy weapons and wounds from alien claws and teeth. As the Retribution traveled through space toward the Kithara system, the crew trained every day. They practiced boarding enemy ships. They learned to fight in alien environments. They studied the layout of Kithara City so they could protect civilians during the battle. Ryan stood on the bridge and looked at the stars streaming past the ship. In 2 weeks, they would arrive at the Kithara system. They would be the first humans to fight a war on another planet. They would face an enemy that had conquered dozens of worlds. But Ryan was not afraid. He knew his crew was ready. The Vortex had spent centuries conquering weak species that could not fight back. They had never faced predators from a death world. They had never fought soldiers who grew up on a planet that tried to kill them every day. Earth had taught humans how to survive impossible odds. Now Earth's children were coming to teach the galaxy that some fights were worth taking, no matter how dangerous the enemy might be. The Retribution dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kithara star system. Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge and stared at the destruction in front of him. Where the Kithara had described floating cities and peaceful ocean worlds, he saw only wreckage and death. Huge pieces of metal and stone drifted through space. These had once been cities where millions of Kithara lived and worked. Now they were cold graves spinning in the darkness. The planet below was covered with brown clouds instead of the blue skies the Kithara had shown in their messages. Massive craters scarred the surface where Vortex weapons had struck from space. Commander Jake Harrison studied the sensor readings. The Cathara planet was still alive, but barely. The northern continent showed life signs. There were still cities. There, still people fighting to survive. But the southern half of the planet was dark and silent. Whatever had lived there was gone forever. Dr. Alex Turner worked frantically at his station, analyzing the atmosphere and surface conditions. The Vorthak had poisoned the air with some kind of chemical weapon. The oceans were filled with ash and debris, but the readings showed that humans could still breathe the air with filter masks. The gravity was slightly stronger than Earth's, but not enough to slow down human soldiers. Lieutenant Colonel Beth Williams prepared the first shuttle mission to the surface. She would lead a team of soldiers and diplomats to make contact with the surviving Cathara. This would be humanity's first meeting with a living alien species. Everyone knew that what happened in the next few hours would change both species forever. The shuttle flew through the poisoned atmosphere toward the largest remaining Cathara city. As they got closer, Beth could see the alien architecture. The buildings looked like they were grown instead of built. They curved and twisted like living trees made of crystal and metal. Even damaged and covered with ash, they were beautiful in a way that took her breath away. The shuttle landed in what appeared to be a landing area. Cathara civilians gathered around the ship, but they kept their distance. Beth could see they were afraid. The aliens were tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished stone. Their faces had large eyes that seemed to glow with their own light. They moved gracefully despite their fear. One of the Cathara stepped forward. This one wore robes that sparkled with embedded crystals. When it spoke, the words came through translation devices that the Cathara had prepared. The voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The Cathara leader called itself Harmony of Stars. It welcomed the humans but also expressed fear. The alien said it could sense the violence that lived inside human minds. It could feel the darkness that came from living on a world of predators and prey. Harmony of Stars asked if humans were sure they wanted to fight the Vorthak. The Vorthak had destroyed 17 worlds and enslaved 43 different species. Their hunger for conquest never ended. Beth removed her helmet and looked directly at the alien leader. She said that humans had come because they heard a cry for help. She said that on Earth, the strong protected the weak. She said that humans would fight anyone who tried to destroy peaceful people. The Vorthak might be strong, but they had never fought humans before. Harmony of Stars led the humans through the damaged city. They saw Cathara families hiding in underground shelters. They saw hospitals filled with wounded civilians. They saw children whose large eyes held terror that no child should ever know. The Cathara had been a peaceful people who studied art and science. They had never learned to fight wars because they had never needed to. Captain Brooks received the report from the surface team and felt anger building in his chest. The Vorthak were not just conquerors. They were bullies who picked on species that could not fight back. They enjoyed causing fear and pain. Brooks had spent his career fighting bullies, from playground thugs to terrorist armies. This would be no different. The Vorthak attack came without warning. Their ships appeared on the sensors like ghosts materializing out of nothing. The alien vessels were massive and ugly, covered with what looked like organic armor. They moved through space like living creatures, pulsing and writhing as they approached the human ship. Brooks ordered battle stations. The crew of the Retribution had trained for this moment for months. Every person knew their job. Every weapon was ready. The ship turned to face the approaching Vorthak fleet with the confidence of predators who had never learned to run from a fight. The first Vorthak ship was larger than anything humans had ever built. It looked like a giant insect made of metal and bone. Energy weapons fired from dozens of points along its hull. The beams were powerful enough to melt mountains, but the Retribution's shields held. Human engineering had learned from studying every crashed alien ship Earth had ever found. Brooks ordered the kinetic cannons to fire. Metal slugs the size of telephone poles shot out at incredible speed. They punched through the Vorthak ship's organic armor like bullets through paper. The alien ship shuddered and began to leak atmosphere and strange fluids. The second Vorthak's ship tried to ram the Retribution. This was a tactic that had worked against other species, but humans had been ramming enemy ships since the age of wooden sailing vessels. Brooks ordered the ship to turn at the last second. The Vorthak ship missed and flew into the firing range of the plasma cannons. The plasma beams cut through the alien ship like a hot knife through butter. The Vorthak vessel split in half and exploded in a ball of green fire. Debris rained down on the Cathara planet below, but the pieces were too small to cause damage. The third Vorthak ship fired some kind of biological weapon at the Retribution. It was a cloud of living organisms designed to eat through metal and kill any crew they touched. But the organisms had evolved to fight other alien species. They had never encountered Earth biology. The human immune system, trained by millions of years of fighting diseases and parasites, destroyed the alien organisms. Before they could cause damage, Dr. Rachel Kim analyzed samples of the biological weapon and laughed. She told Captain Brooks that the Vorthak weapon was actually weaker than a common Earth-cold virus. Humans had been fighting biological weapons since they first lived in caves. Their bodies were designed to survive attacks that would kill most other species. The battle lasted for 6 hours. When it was over, 3 Vorthak ships were destroyed and 2 more were fleeing toward the outer system. The Retribution had taken damage but was still fighting ready. More important, they had sent a message to the Vorthak Empire. Humans had arrived in the galaxy. And they were not afraid. Harmony of Stars contacted the human ship with amazement in its voice. The Cathara had never seen anyone defeat the Vorthak in direct battle. The alien leader asked how humans had learned to fight so well. Captain Brooks explained that humans came from a world where everything tried to kill them. They had learned to fight or die. Now, they brought that knowledge to help their new friends. The first battle was over, but everyone knew it was just the beginning. The Vorthak would return with more ships and deadlier weapons, but now they would face an enemy unlike anything they had conquered before. They would face the children of Earth, the survivors of the galaxy's most dangerous world. The Vorthak had started a war with the wrong species. News of the human victory spread through Vorthak space faster than their ships could travel. For 300 years, the Vorthak Empire had conquered every species they encountered. Their massive fleets had destroyed civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. No one had ever defeated them in open battle. Now reports were coming in about strange aliens from a planet called Earth who had destroyed 3 Vorthak warships without losing a single vessel. The Vorthak High Command did not believe the first reports. They thought their ship commanders were making excuses for running away from a fight. But more reports kept coming in. The humans were not just lucky. They were dangerous in ways the Vorthak had never seen before. General Patricia Stone arrived at the Cathara system 3 weeks after the first battle. She brought with her 5 more Earth defense ships and 20 converted civilian vessels loaded with weapons and supplies. The mining ship New Texas carried enough nuclear weapons to turn a planet into radioactive dust. But the most important cargo was 10,000 more human soldiers. Stone established a command base on the largest moon of the Cathara planet. Human engineers worked day and night to turn the barren rock into a fortress. They dug tunnels deep into the moon's core and filled them with weapons and supplies. The base could survive a direct hit from the strongest Vorthak weapons and keep fighting. Captain Ryan Brooks met with General Stone in the new command center. The walls were covered with maps of Vorthak territory and battle plans that showed dozens of alien worlds. Stone explained that Earth had been monitoring Vorthak communications since the first battle. The aliens were preparing a massive fleet to attack the Cathara system. More than 50 warships were coming, each one larger than the Retribution. Brooks suggested that humans should not try to fight the Vorthak fleet in direct battle. The aliens had too many ships and too much firepower. Instead, humans should use the tactics that had made them successful on Earth. They should fight like guerrillas, hitting the enemy where they were weak and running away before the enemy could strike back. Dr. Alex Turner had been studying Vorthak psychology and biology. He discovered something important about the alien conquerors. They were used to fighting species that either surrendered immediately or fought in predictable ways. The Vorthak had never faced an enemy that adapted and changed tactics during a battle. They had never fought soldiers who enjoyed fighting against impossible odds. Commander Tony Richards led the first special operations mission against a Vorthak supply base. His team used small, fast ships to sneak past the alien sensors. They landed on an asteroid where the Vorthak stored fuel and weapons for their fleet. The aliens had never bothered to guard their supply lines because no one had ever attacked them before. Richards and his soldiers moved through the alien base like ghosts. They planted explosive charges on fuel tanks and weapon storage areas. The Vorthak guards were big and strong, but they moved slowly and made noise when they walked. Human soldiers who had learned to hunt in Earth's forests could move without being seen or heard. The supply base exploded just as the main Vorthak fleet was preparing to attack the Cathara system. Half their fuel was destroyed. Many of their best weapons were gone. The fleet had to delay their attack while they found more supplies. This gave Earth more time to prepare defenses and send reinforcements. The Vorthak tried to use the same biological weapons that had failed in the first battle. This time they made the organisms stronger and more aggressive. But Dr. Rachel Kim had been working with samples of Vorthak biology. She created a virus that was harmless to humans and Cathara but deadly to Vorthak organisms. When the aliens fired their biological weapons, the human virus turned their own weapons against them. Human forces began broadcasting on all Vorthak communication channels. They sent recordings of human music, especially war songs and battle anthems. They transmitted video of human athletes performing feats that should have been impossible. They showed footage of humans surviving in Earth's most dangerous environments, from Antarctic blizzards to volcanic eruptions. The psychological warfare was more effective than anyone had expected. The Vorthak had conquered other species by making them afraid. They had never faced an enemy that tried to scare them instead. The alien warriors began to have doubts about their invincibility. Some of them started to wonder if humans were really the same type of creature they had been fighting all these years. Lieutenant Colonel Beth Williams led an attack on a Vorthak communications station. The aliens had built it on a planet with gravity 5 times stronger than Earth's gravity. They thought no other species could operate in such conditions. But Williams and her Marines had trained in centrifuges that simulated high gravity. They could move and fight normally while the Vorthak struggled with the weight of their own bodies. The attack was broadcast live to every Vorthak ship in the system. The aliens watched human soldiers moving faster and fighting harder in conditions that should have crushed them. The Marines destroyed the communication station and escaped before Vorthak reinforcements could arrive. The message was clear: humans could fight anywhere, under any conditions. Dr. Turner made a discovery that changed everything humans knew about their enemy. He found records in captured Vorthak computers that showed the aliens' history. The Vorthak came from a planet where they were the only intelligent species. They had never learned to compete with other smart creatures. Every species they conquered had been weaker and less aggressive than they were, but humans were different. Earth had produced dozens of intelligent species over millions of years. Humans had competed with Neanderthals, Denisovans, and other human subspecies. They had learned to survive by being smarter, faster, and more adaptable than their competitors. The Vorthak had never faced anything like natural selection pressure that had created humanity. The turning point came when the Vorthak tried to poison the atmosphere of the Cathara planet. They released a gas that would kill both Cathara and humans within hours. But human biology was more flexible than the aliens expected. Dr. Kim developed breathing masks that filtered out the poison. Human soldiers could continue fighting while Vorthak troops had to wear bulky protective gear that slowed them down. General Stone implemented what became known as the Deathworld Doctrine. Instead of trying to match Vorthak technology, humans would use their natural advantages. They would fight in environments that favored adaptability over strength. They would use tactics that confused enemies who expected predictable behavior. They would never fight fair when they could fight smart instead. The doctrine worked better than anyone had hoped. Human forces began winning battles they should have lost. They captured Vorthok ships and turned the aliens' own weapons against them. They rescued prisoners from worlds the Vorthok had conquered and taught other species how to fight back. Captain Brooks received a message from Earth that made him smile. President Carter was sending more ships and soldiers. But more important, she was sending teachers and doctors and engineers. Earth was not just planning to win this war. They were planning to rebuild everything the Vorthok had destroyed and make sure it never happened again. The Vorthok Empire was learning something they had never experienced before. Fear. For the first time in their history, they were fighting an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with every battle. The humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were predators from a world that had spent millions of years trying to kill them. And they had come to the galaxy to teach the Vorthok what it felt like to be prey. 6 months after the first human ships entered Cathara space, the impossible had happened. The Vorthok Empire, conquerors of 17 worlds and enslavers of 43 species, was asking for peace. Their mighty fleets were scattered across the galaxy, running from human forces that seemed to appear everywhere at once. Their morale was broken. Their leaders were in panic. Admiral Catherine Price stood on the bridge of the newly arrived Earth defense ship Guardian and watched the Vorthok delegation approach under flags of surrender. The aliens who had terrorized the galaxy for 3 centuries were coming to beg for mercy from a species they had never heard of 6 months ago. The peace talks took place on the neutral ground of the Cathara moon base. General Patricia Stone represented Earth and its allies. The Vorthok sent their highest military commander, a massive creature called War Leader Krex, who stood 10 feet tall and weighed as much as a small truck. Even in defeat, the alien was intimidating to look at, but Krex was no longer the confident conqueror who had destroyed civilizations. His voice shook when he spoke through the translation devices. He said the Vorthok would withdraw from all occupied territories. They would pay reparations to the species they had enslaved. They would submit to monitoring by human and Cathara peacekeeping forces. In exchange, they asked only that humans not hunt them to extinction. General Stone listened to the terms and nodded, but she added conditions of her own. The Vorthok would release all prisoners and slaves immediately. They would provide technology to help rebuild the worlds they had destroyed. Most important, they would never again attack peaceful species. If they broke this agreement, Earth would come for them with everything it had. The Vorthok agreed to everything. They had learned what humans were capable of when they were angry. They did not want to find out what humans would do if they became truly motivated to destroy their enemies. President Helen Carter addressed the United Nations General Assembly when news of the peace treaty reached Earth. She stood before representatives from every nation on the planet and told them that humanity had taken its first steps into a larger universe. Earth had gone to the stars as protectors and had discovered that their greatest export was not technology or weapons, but hope. The president explained that other alien species had been watching the war between humans and Vorthok. Many of these species had been suppressed or enslaved for generations. They had given up hope of ever being free, but when they saw humans answer the Cathara distress call, they began to believe that freedom was possible. Messages started arriving at Earth from dozens of different star systems. Some were from species that had been enslaved by the Vorthok and wanted help rebuilding their worlds. Others were from civilizations that had hidden themselves to avoid Vorthok attention and now wanted to join a galactic community where peaceful species could live safely. Dr. Lisa Morgan, who had first detected the Cathara distress signal, was put in charge of the new Galactic Communications Center. Her team worked around the clock to answer every message that reached Earth. They sent replies promising that no species would face extinction alone as long as humans existed to help them. The Cathara established a permanent embassy on Earth's moon. Their crystal architecture gleamed against the gray lunar landscape like jewels in the darkness. Harmony of Stars, now bearing the title Ambassador Between Worlds, spoke at the dedication ceremony. The alien leader said that when the Kithara sent their signal into space, they had hoped for salvation. Instead, they found something much more valuable. They found friendship with a species that understood that true strength came from protecting others, not from destroying them. Captain Ryan Brooks was promoted to admiral and given command of the New Earth Defense Fleet. More ships were being built in orbit around Earth, but they were not just warships. There were hospital ships to treat wounded aliens. There were transport ships to carry supplies to devastated worlds. There were science ships to explore the galaxy and make contact with new species. Brooks understood that Earth's role in the galaxy had changed forever. Humans were no longer an unknown species hiding on a single planet. They were the guardians of galactic peace, the ones that peaceful species called when they needed protection. It was a responsibility that Brooks and his crews took seriously. Commander Tony Richards established the first human special operations school on Mars. Students came from all over Earth to learn the tactics that had defeated the Vorthek. They studied guerrilla warfare, survival in hostile environments, and psychological operations. But the most important lesson was about why humans fought. They fought not for conquest or glory, but to protect those who could not protect themselves. Dr. Alex Turner began working with scientists from dozens of alien species to create a new understanding of galactic biology and psychology. He discovered that humans were unique in the galaxy not because they were the strongest or smartest, but because they had learned to survive on the most dangerous planet anyone had ever encountered. This had made them incredibly adaptable and willing to face impossible odds when they believed in their cause. Dr. Rachel Kim opened the first interspecies medical center on the Kithara homeworld. Human doctors worked alongside alien healers to treat wounds and diseases that had never been seen before. The center became a symbol of cooperation between species that had once been strangers to each other. The Vorthak slowly began to change under human influence. Without the ability to conquer and enslave other species, they had to find new ways to live. Some of them became traders, using their large ships to carry cargo between star systems. Others became guards and security forces, protecting the same species they had once terrorized. A few even joined human crews, learning to fight alongside the soldiers who had defeated them. War leader Krex surprised everyone by requesting permission to study human military tactics. He said the Vorthak had spent centuries believing that size and strength were all that mattered in war. Humans had taught them that intelligence, adaptability, and fighting for the right cause were more important than any weapon. Krex wanted to learn these lessons so he could teach them to his own people. 5 years after the first alien distress call reached Earth, the galaxy had become a very different place. The age of conquest was over. Species that had hidden in fear now traveled openly between star systems. Trade and scientific cooperation flourished. New colonies were established on worlds that had been empty since the Vorthak destroyed their original inhabitants. Earth became the center of a growing alliance of free worlds. The planet that had once been isolated and unknown was now the most important world in the galaxy. Human culture, with its emphasis on protecting the weak and fighting for justice, spread to hundreds of species across thousands of star systems. Admiral Price stood on the observation deck of the Guardian and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other species might be sending distress calls into the darkness, hoping that someone would hear them and care enough to help. She knew that as long as humans existed, those calls would not go unanswered. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. When peaceful beings cried out for help, when the innocent faced destruction, when the weak were threatened by the strong, there was a species that would answer. They came from a small blue planet on the edge of a spiral arm. They called themselves humans. And they had taught the universe that no one should face the darkness alone. The story that began with a desperate signal from a dying world had become something larger. It had become a promise that echoed across the galaxy. Help was coming, hope was real. And somewhere among the stars, the children of Earth were listening, ready to answer any call for help with the same words they had always used when the innocent were threatened. We are here, we will fight. And we will never let you face the darkness alone.